Good morning, everybody, and welcome. We'll just wait 30 seconds to let any last-minute joiners join, and before my clock ticks over to 9:01 a.m., I will begin. There it is. All right, good morning and welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. This is the first of our three-part webinar series in 2025, and today we'll be discussing why cybercrime is shifting from organizations to the home. So once again, thank you so much. We had over 170 people registered. So this is obviously a topic that's on people's minds. We're doing a recording and we'll send this around to everybody. I've got a less than 3-minute intro and then we will get going. So please, audience, if you're online now, if you move your cursor, you can go to the bottom and just to the right of center, you'll see a little Q&A. Please feel free to contribute questions via that Q&A tab at any point in time. I will monitor those questions. The other panelists will also be able to see those questions. And as they come in, I will integrate them into the conversation as soon as possible. So very quickly, I'm going to introduce our panelists and myself, and then we will get going. First, we've got Daisy Wong. Daisy is the head of security awareness for one of Australia's largest private health insurance companies. She's got over 8 years of experience across a number of industries, retail, finance, and government. She's also really funny. Every time I deal with Daisy, I wind up laughing. She spends time laughing. It's great. Always a pleasure to work with you, Daisy. Thank you so much for being here today. Next, we have Bo Tid. Bo has over 25 years experience in senior exec roles on boards. He's been a CEO, a CIO. Bo has worked in, on, and with emerging technology, cybersecurity, smart cities, aviation, that's where I first met him, international development and research. And he also does this amazing thing with his children. As they get to a certain age and about to graduate from high school, he takes each one of his children on an awesome one-on-one dad and child trip. I just think that's fantastic. And of course, it tells us a lot about Bo and his values and the kind of person he is. Last but not least, in terms of panelists, we have my business partner, Brian Hay. There are few people in Australia, or really in the world for that matter, who know more about cybercrime, cybercriminals, and cybersecurity than Brian. After spending 35 years as Detective Superintendent of Fraud and Cybercrime at the Queensland Police Service, he worked with Dimension Data, then Unisys, then started cultural cybersecurity with me almost a decade ago now. And in case you're not aware, Brian is a wine connoisseur, but he also has this strange habit of going to some of the coldest places on earth for his holidays. I've known him for a decade and I still have no idea why he does that. All right, and finally, my name is James Colopio. I'll be your moderator for all three of these sessions. I came to Australia 26 years ago for 6 months. That's why I still have this bizarre, broad American accent. My background's in psychology and organizational consulting. So look, that's it. Welcome. And in today's webinar, we are discussing some of the many reasons why cyber criminals will target your home more and more, and of course, what you can do about it. So first question, please. I'll start with Brian, then I'll go to Daisy, then to Bo. I'll ask each of you to give me 1 or 2 reasons, please. Why do you think cyber criminals are finding attacking people at home more and more attractive? Please, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, James, and thank you for the other panelists for giving up their valuable time today, and everyone out there in attendee land just joining us on this webinar call. Look, the simple truth is, what is the greatest motivational factor of cybercrime? And that is, from an entity perspective, it is organised crime. We know the research shows over 80%, and that's not shocking. Whilst the media drive a populist theory, they want to talk about cyber threats in terms of nation-sponsored actors such as, China, North Korea, Iraq, Iran, blah, blah, blah. The truth is the greatest driver is organised crime. The fundamental mission of organised crime is make money. Don't get caught, and then launder your ill-gotten gains. They're the 3 big challenges. Now, to enter the first part of this, make money. The organisations around the country have invested billions and perhaps globally trillions of dollars in good technology to try and defend their systems. But we know that 95% of data breaches that occur because of human error. Now, what we know from the work we've done when we go into organisations who do cultural diagnostics and look at the how, the why, the means and attitudes, perceptions, all that sort of stuff, is that people at work are switched on more to cybersecurity issues. They know they are more vulnerable in their home to cybersecurity threats, but here's what's really interesting. They admit to being less vigilant at home. So in essence, the home is that private dwelling where they feel safe with the walls, but they're actually more vulnerable and they behave less secure. So the criminals now know, you know what, it's easy to get people at home. You throw in the fact that more people are working from home, and it's sort of become this cornucopia of opportunity for criminals.
Thank you, Brian. Daisy, from your perspective, any ideas why people are being attacked more and more at home?
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Um, Always good to work with you as well, James. Less funny with this response though, because I think it is a serious matter.
Absolutely.
But I think, building on what Brian said, I think, we have weaker controls at home. Generally speaking, people at home, or at least depending on your occupation, but I have friends who work from home and they don't really, like, they just connect to the internet and that's it. They don't actually understand how people can get in. I think there's more personal devices, IoT devices. My whole house is Google. And I knew I was, being in the industry, I set up a different router and a different network to put all my IoT devices. But all my friends don't know that. It's too complicated. They will always choose convenience over security. I also feel like it's a lot easier because, I am probably the youngest around here. I'm not sure about Ryan, but, it's also a lot easier to find information about you, especially with social media. Like it's so easy to target you. Like a lot of, younger people now use Snapchat, TikTok. There are so many apps out there that track your location. And if you don't know, it's so easy to find you, so easy to find information about you, and it's just an easier target. And I think it's a really easy way to get in. They get in through your home to then potentially get back to your organization.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Social media, I want to definitely come back to that. And you hit the nail on the head with people always choosing convenience over security, right? It's just such a natural thing. Thank you so much, Daisy. Last but not least, Bo, any ideas why that we haven't mentioned yet about why people are going to be more vulnerable at home when cyber criminals finding it more attractive?
Firstly, thanks for inviting me, James. It's great to be here, and I probably should not go last on all these because all the good stuff's been said before. But let's just continue.
Take care of that. I'll make sure it doesn't
happen. No special treatment. Daisy's already pitched him there as being one of the older people on this panel, so.
Well, I thought that that was just including you two. I didn't think I was including that. So yes. It's fairly simple. I think we spend a lot of money in the organisation. We have cyber teams, or if we're small enough, we might have an IT support person who will come in, and their own job is to make sure that the organisation's hardened. Whether that's a small, medium enterprise, larger enterprise is a bigger team. We don't have that at home. It's relying to whoever's got the most skill at home to set up that router or to set up the IoT devices. So we generally leave them fairly vulnerable. Now, once we throw in different ages into that mix, so we got younger kids coming through, they're just going to bring devices in. We got older people who will just leave things, connect, share the password. So really at the moment, what we have is every house will have multiple devices that are very easy to access. And most of these devices will be connecting to an external system. So if I've got CCTV, they'll connect to a cloud storage system. If I've got TVs, they'll connect out. If I've got Google or Amazon or any other devices, they're connecting to different systems. So we're opening up, essentially our house, we're opening up every door and we're saying, come on in. So really what we're doing is we're protecting the office, but we're not protecting the weakest point, which is the devices that we bring home or the access that we bring home into those offices.
Awesome. Yes, it definitely is the weakest point. Multi-generations, multi-devices. And you're right, not all of us have an IT professional at home to take care of these things. So look, in all fairness, we'll actually start with you this time, Bo, for the next question. What types of home-based cybercrimes are we seeing? Are you aware of any you can share with us?
Oh, look, I think everyone would be aware of some of the business email compromises that are coming through, but we're seeing that now personal email. So for me, I'd sort of look at the attacks that are becoming more personal. So the emails that are coming through who are identifying us because they're scraping the information that's available, and they're making it personal for us to respond to them. So as soon as we open a dialogue with one of these emails, or one of the organizations who are behind this, we open up the channel of a discussion. So Brian will obviously talk about the romance schemes that are out there because he's been part of a few, but there's lots of other scenarios that are building. I've got a number of kids, and my concern, I suppose, is the education with those kids to understand when it's becoming personal for them, because they do have a lot more information that's available for them online. So I think as a parent, we're going to see more and more kids being targeted and parents being involved in that targeted response.
Absolutely fantastic. And just to be clear, Brian was involved in romance scams, but he was involved on investigating them and bringing the criminals to justice. Make sure we're very clear which side he was on.
Yeah, I didn't have AI in those days to make me look better than I did. So if you're a man like me with a head like a beaten favourite, and Bo understands exactly what I'm talking about, you've got to put someone else's head up there to actually get any sort of degree of attraction.
Daisy, any in your organizational experience, any types of home-based cyber crimes you're noticing? Before I turn to, obviously, Brian, I'll ask you next.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of actually my friend. I don't have children, but my friends' children are now playing a lot of games like Roblox, and obviously if they're teenagers, there might be online dating. And I have had a situation where a friend's teenage son was actually like their Instagram account was locked, and they tried to pay money, and apparently they said that they got sensitive nude photos of them, and my friend didn't know what to do and came to me. So they were actually he was really close to paying the $500-$600 because he's like, it's not worth my son's anguish, his anxiety, these photos. And I had to say to him, you're going to have to face it head on. You can't just pay these cyber criminals. So I feel like when we're talking about home-based cyber crimes, but for me at least, I'm seeing more of this like extortion, ransomware, this kind of identity theft, more so than maybe phishing and spear phishing. It depends what they're targeting though. So like if it's children, I feel like they go quite quickly into, we've got your sensitive information, we've got your photos, we want quick money. But then I feel like depending on the person, I've also heard of, more senior people in organizations, they've been targeted in the home because it's easier. And then again, they try and send them a spear phishing email to their personal to hopefully get back through to the organization.
Perfect. Great examples. Thank you so much. And before I turn it over to you, Brian, let me tell everybody, Discord, which is the gaming platform that a lot of kids use, that related to what Daisy was just talking about, and TikTok, in the terms and conditions for both of those, as far as I'm aware, they've actually given themselves permission to steal, that is to use your children's and anybody who's on them, all the conversations, the biometric information, the video, the audio. So yes, as Bo said, and as Daisy said, we just have to make sure that we're educating our children. Brian, what sort of examples are we seeing of home-based cyber crimes?
Look, I just want to qualify that, the stealing is what we think they're doing, but we've actually consented to them using it. And so that's why we can really aggravate some people. But I think this isn't new as far as we know it. I'm just going to give one of the last matters I had when I was still in law enforcement, so a very long time ago, was a CFO in Brisbane received an email, and attached to that email was a photograph of his 5-year-old son. And the threat was, pay me $5,000 or I will ruin the online reputation of your child for the rest of their living years. Now, imagine how you would feel if you received that, and what would you do to protect your child? Now, how did we respond to that? We said, don't pay anything, call their bluff. They will not put that time and energy for $5,000, and the matter just went away. But the fact remains is they were using the children as leverage and back. But what is that if they said, give me your user ID and password credentials, for 20 minutes, or I will ruin the online reputation of your child for the rest of their days. Now, back then, kids weren't as heavily into social media and so many things. So the potential impact was much less severe than it would be today, for example. And it really just highlights how emotive, and Daisy was talking about, sextortion before, but I saw a very, very ugly one, which really is going to make it more difficult for people to ignore, because there was a threat of a ransomware on a personal device at home. If you do not pay $1,000, I'm going to post on social media the child exploitation images we took from your computer. Now, the problem with our media and the problem with people and society is it's the old adage, mud sticks. So even though we know it's completely fake and untrue, how many people would want it to be publicly accused of such thing and be in possession of it? I'm sorry, it's, and it just gives you an insight into the perverse, corrupt, mongrel mind of the criminal. They do not care. James, you're all the psychologist, right? But the sociopathic tendencies of these people harm at any cost as long as they get the money. And this is something we need to brace for and start understanding. They're not playing by rules. They're making the rules as they go on this journey, and it's all about the money. So I'll shut up and give someone else a chance.
No, I'll hit the nail on the head. They are ruthless. They have no morals, no ethicals. They will scam your 12-year-old daughter as easily as your 88-year-old grandparent. They just couldn't care less. So look, what we've seen in terms of home-based cybercrimes, we've seen people using relay boxes to go up to your home and your garage and relay the information from your car keys to cars and steal your cars. They can steal information out of your dumpster. They can get financial information. It's just amazing. So just quick aside, I've got two questions in the Q&A. Just want to let you know I see them. I will integrate those when they're appropriate. Thank you so much, and keep them coming. So cast your minds forward. Brian, Bo, Daisy, any one of you can jump in at any time. Cast your minds forward. Prediction time. What types of home-based cyber crimes do you expect to see that might emerge, that we need to be on the lookout for? Any ideas about that?
Can I just preface the responses by saying all criminals are not the same. All may be motivated by different areas. All may have different areas of expertise. And this became very paramount when we started investigating advanced fee fraud or Nigerian fraud back in 2005. And what we found just in, the Nigerian scams, if you like, was an entire hierarchy of different crime groups coming together to work in concert down to individual operators. And their targets were quite separate. So you could have criminals groups that were targeting in the millions of dollars. Then they would actually formulate intelligence hubs and suckers lists, and they would then sell that data after they'd stopped making hundreds of thousands, and to people who would specialize in tens of thousands to extract. Then they would then sell to single digit thousands, and then they would sell down to the hundreds and the $50. So all criminals are not the same. Their motivation can be different. Their target goals are different. Their methodologies are different. And we've got to be careful of pigeonholing what it may be, because what we do need is, I'm going to suggest, is we need to be in a mental state of omnipresence and understand that the attack can come from anywhere at different levels and different things. So I haven't answered your question yet, James, forgive me. I just wanted to put that out there so everyone understood it's not just one issue we need to be worried about, or one thing. But I'll leave Big Mouth Bo or the delightful Daisy to. Oh, sorry, did I say that out loud? Oh, I'm sorry, mate. Yeah, but you did throw some barbs, so I just had to square off.
Still a long way to go.
this we all, in case you're in the audience, we all know each other very, very well. So there's lots of teasing and banter, and it's all in very good nature. And we do
Is
love to
it,
tease
James?
each other.
Is it?
Well, I think so. I hope so. At least
Yeah.
it is on my side. That's all I can say.
I don't know. I like everyone, but Brian, I don't know. We like to argue.
Keep them guessing. Keep them guessing.
All right.
So we got some video of Brian playing golf. We can post that later. It may be
Oh, I
AI
like
generated.
that.
Yeah.
Maybe we should extort him.
Yeah, so
Yes.
folks, whatever they got is made up. AI has incredible
Yeah.
capability these
Fake,
days.
fake,
Well,
fake.
could I just add to that? Because Brian said AI about the question you asked, James, about future home-based
Yes, please.
homes and things. I really do think it's going to be deep fakes. And I know it seems like this session, I don't even have children, but it seems like all my answers are related to kids because my goddaughters are 8 and 6. And I've got, my nephew who moved from Hong Kong. But I feel like the future crimes will be very based on deep fakes and AI attacks. I feel like, we've all heard about the CFO in Hong Kong who gave 25 million away. I think we're going to see more and more impersonation scams targeting individuals, small businesses in particular, because they don't have the security controls. Like I cannot, to this day, I've been seeing my doctor for 20 years. I'm only 21, but he will not get off Gmail. Like he's just like, I don't know how. Like he still sends my personal medical records via Gmail. And I'm like, why can't you get a better system? He's like, he doesn't know I'm a doctor. And I feel like whenever I try to suggest him go somewhere, I feel like there's a gap in the market. Like, it's either the consultants who do the larger, medium-sized corporations and those sole traders and small businesses are kind of left to defend themselves. But yeah, I feel like deepfake and AI is definitely what we'll see a lot more of. And I always tell my goddaughters and my best friend, we need a safe word.
Right.
Because I don't know how I'm going to decipher if that is her anymore. So we're going to have a safe word so then I can verify, hey, this is actually my goddaughter messaging that she needs help.
Absolutely. Great point. Daisy, we talk about it. Make sure you have a family passphrase. And what Davey's alluding to is, when I talk to my daughters on a regular basis, I assume it's my daughters. But if I'm ever in trouble or they're ever in trouble and we need money or something like that, there's a family passphrase that nobody else on the planet knows except me and the two of them. And we have to ask for that and share that. So that's what Daisy's referring to. Yeah, very great idea. Yeah, because how do you tell? AI is getting really good with deep fakes and audio and video. Thank you, Daisy, so much. Bo, Brian, any
So whether James, what's your passphrase? Just put it out there.
Well, it is. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, let me tell you what that is. Look, just following on from the deep fake, I founded a company just recently, which is essentially building deep fakes for a ethical purpose. But what I didn't realize and going through this process is how easy it is. Once you start pulling together the voice synchronization, the putting photos and being able to generate video from that photo and adding those together and then getting someone's cadence when they speak through another video, it is very, very simple to create the deep fakes that are essentially lifelike. So when we start using that, we have an ethical sort of obligation, I suppose, for the company that I've created to ensure that it's used for good. But you flip that aside, if you have no ethics, it's very, very simple to use this. And it's getting better and better. Each week there's someone releasing a new library or a new way of doing something. And it's as a service now. You can buy this stuff as a service and use it. So it's becoming cheaper to be using technology for essentially simple ways to get into the house and to access people's information. And we're giving away a lot of that information. So really what we've got is, how do we harvest that information? If I'm a criminal, how do I harvest that to make money? And how do I do it in a way where I used to go after big companies, but there was a risk of getting caught. The risk of getting caught from a home is very low. The risk of getting prosecuted after being caught is even less. So that's why the house is going to become the easiest target. And the small and medium businesses are very simple targets too, because they don't have the expertise that are supporting that business with standards. We look at standards and implied sort of levels of maturity. Small and medium enterprises don't have that. So we need to strengthen small and medium enterprises and use the house, look at the house as a small and medium enterprise. I've got more devices on my network now in my house than what I had in the first job that I had in IT.
Right.
I got more email accounts sitting in my house at the moment than what we had 25 years ago for a large enterprise, 30 years ago. And Brian would remember when the first email came through that he would receive when he was about 40.
But it was actually wasn't an email. It was a piece of slate with a carving chiseled out on a message. It left it like cave to entry. Yeah.
So I think there's, if we look at where we're going with this, that we don't protect the house because we don't look at it as vulnerable. It is vulnerable. And we don't take a collective approach. We've got neighborhood watch that goes around and looks for criminals who break into our house. We have nothing like that for technology. We don't have groups that are going around helping people and vulnerable sort of households secure it. We don't have schools teaching it in a way that makes sense for students and kids coming home saying, we need to do something more about this, mum and dad.
One of the problems, I think, mate, is that we compartmentalize our lives because we're so busy in order to manage it. And what we have not yet evolved our thinking to do is think about how we evolved and try and be predictive ahead of the IT curve, if you like, or the growth. And we haven't, we fall into a lackadaisical attitude that, the government will take care of it or the police will take care of it. And that's a completely redundant notion. The fact that I'm compliant is a redundant notion. Look, I've worked in I was there in the early days back in law enforcement pushing for things like the introduction of mandatory data breach notification scans. I was chair for 5 years, Australian New Zealand Police Authority G-Criminal Week, and all that push. How long does it take to get a piece of legislation through? Well, if you're Donald Trump, maybe you can sign something off next today and then you can enshrine it in law and then you go through legal challenges. But can I tell you, in this country, to try and get the legislation through in the absence of a chaotic event is normally 3 to 5 years. Now, what's interesting, I saw a study, I think it was by the ANU, 10 years ago. New technology comes out. Who were the first adopters? The crooks. Who is next? Well, you might get in the commercial space, then home and personal use, then government, and then law enforcement was at the end.
So go back to that, Brian. Who's the first users? It's whoever can make money out of it. So businesses have got their red tape to be able to implement something new within a business. As a crook, you don't have that. You can just try it.
Crooks are using it to exploit. Okay, this is going to be adopted. How do we actually reverse engineer it? How can we monetize the opportunities this technology presents? They are the first adopters of the technology. That's why we've seen, AI, we catch cry now, but it's been used for donkeys. It's been used for a decade. So I think, and if I just touch on the compliance, don't get me wrong, I'm for compliance, but it's got to be your floor, not your ceiling. And too many organizations think it's compliance is where we need to be. No, that's your minimum. Because if you think about the process where I was going with a 5-year introduction of legislation, which then imposes regulatory demands on those compliance issues, that's 5 years redundant. It's 5 years behind the times to what's advancing at the front end with the adoption of new emerging technologies. So we really have to move from that reactive mindset into a proactive mindset. And, if anyone's heard me present, you've probably heard me say many times that if I wanted to get into your organization, I would profile your staff. I would profile the staff's families. I would target your young children. It's not because I'm evil. I'm thinking from a crook's perspective, because of one simple fact. Because I suggest you are far more likely to open an attachment in an email presented from your 5-year-old child than you would a complete ugly stranger like me. And you think of the simple logic that represents it. This is why we are seeing a migration of effort by criminals into the home, targeting family members in order to get to the staff member, then ultimately to get potentially into the organization. So there's two victims groups here. The victim is still the organization, the ultimate member of the hierarchical tree. But then, you know what? There are others who are going to target the children, and others are going to target the parents and the grandparents and the older people in the community, the vulnerable, the lonely. It's a whole suite. And the fundamental position is they're not ready for it. We are still not ready for it. And I'll shut up for the moment, but there is a metaphor I can use to explain the potential power of evolution.
Get to that for sure, Brian. So look, just take a breath, everybody. Question from the audience: are they focusing on targeting the individual to extort, or are they using that initial access to pivot to attacking the firm in the same way as it? And so, yes, clearly we're talking about Brian, and a little bit of an advertisement. That's webinar 2. All right, we're going to move from this webinar where we're talking about that it's happening and why it's happening to the link between using this vulnerability at home to access our organizations and what we need to do in our organizations about that. So fantastic first question, definitely, and we'll get to that. Third question, thinking about home-based OT systems, how do you propose to educate people to be safe when using devices like the garage doors, the fob keys, et cetera, et cetera? And the only thing I know, and I'm going to open this up to Brian or Bo or Daisy, is the little Faraday boxes or Faraday baskets. You know, that's what some people suggest is you have to put your car keys, for example, in these little boxes that are surrounded by alfoil or metal or something that are cheap and easy to make or to buy. And then if someone uses one of these repeaters, well, they actually can't get the signal from your keys. Don't leave them in the car, in the garage, with only a little piece of metal separating the outside and the inside. Brian, in your police experience, any other ways for people to protect those devices?
Yeah, look, you've got to look at devices. I was just thinking, you know, and this is where the government does have a role to play. For example, there's a simple piece of legislation that says if you sell an electronic device that connects to cyber, to the internet, or it enables a third-party device, such as a motor vehicle, to act, whatever it may be, you can couch these words in appropriate language. You must have conducted a risk assessment on the security of those devices, and then provide your purchaser with the appropriate advice on how to secure the product straight away. And it should be also legislated. It can't be in size 4 font that, like in the terms and conditions, that are made deliberately so to discourage people from reading them. And so this is where we've got to look at all the enabling processes. I remember going through, I was a member of the International Mass Marketing Fraud Working Group, and there was a bit of work done around identifying all the enablers for a scam to take place. And things like having a computer, having an OSB account, having an email account, having a bank account, blah, blah, blah. And there were about 156 enabling factors. What we need to do is start as a country, is start looking what are the enablers that need to be, that a criminal needs, and how do we then disable or make it more difficult? Because at the end of the day, you've heard many times, I'm sure, you don't have to outrun the bear, just the person beside you. And what we do know is in the pursuit by organized criminals to make greater profits, that if they have to put 4 times the investment of time into victimizing an Australian or an organization in Australia than they do in another country, where are they going to go? They're going to go to the place they'll make $1 million, or go to the place they'll make $4 million. It's all about the money. So we've got to find ways to start thinking about how do we frustrate these mongrels.
Look, just summarizing a couple of things. Remember what Bo said before, the cyber criminals innovate quickly because they don't have any processes to go through like the organizations do, and so they adapt these things and go very, very quickly. Brian mentioned really importantly that compliance is only the floor, it's the minimum, so don't forget that we need to do a great deal more than that. And Daisy, you mentioned sort of a side point that you didn't like Gmail, so we got a question from the audience. What's wrong with Gmail?
Nothing wrong with Gmail, but there's a problem when my doctor's not encrypting and simply sending me my personal medical records through Gmail.
So it's not Gmail per se, it's the security of personal, private, health, financial information.
Correct. Good. And I mean, if we're going to add to that, to the audience, I will always say have a few more emails. I know, Bo, you have a lot, but add one more to it. I have one where I use just for shopping.
Good. Exactly.
And then, one for banking and things. Correct.
That's right. Good. All right. Thank you so much. social media. I hate social media. I wish it was gone. I think it is truly evil as a psychologist. I think it's hurting our children's brains. It's hurting their self-respect. I could go on and on for an hour. I won't. Brian, Bo, Daisy, does social media contribute in any way to this problem of home-based vulnerabilities?
Yes. But I feel like you're a bit strong, James. I
I'm
am
very
a
strong
support.
on it.
Okay, I am definitely a millennial who's on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And so for those who are on it, it's not all evil. It's how you use it. It's like everything in moderation and
Very good.
understanding it. But I do think it is a major problem. Because like I mentioned earlier, I think it's very easy to gather information. So most people, even as a 12 or 10-year-old, when I first got my email, my sister helped me, and it was literally my full name at hotmail.com. So that's first thing, right? Every time I give someone my email, they have my full name. And then, security questions or, generally the personal information that I can easily find. Anyone who knows me knows I like pink. Look at my hair. So it's not hard to find me on LinkedIn. It's not hard to find. And then there's a lot of people who overshare as well. And sometimes it's not you oversharing, it's your friends who are you on holidays with oversharing. And then they see it on their Facebook and they know you're away, they can come target you, etc. So I think we need, so social media is a problem, not as strong as you, James. There's a time and place for it. Okay, I learn a lot off TikTok. Don't judge, but I think it's just how we educate people to use it safely.
I think. Do you want to go, though? Or,
you go, Hollywood. You do it.
Yeah, you're throwing more barbs, mate. Listen here, Princess. I'll square off before this session is done, right? But one of the, I couldn't agree. I'd actually agree very much with Daisy. One of the problems is we don't understand or fully appreciate that every post we make on social media provides us a piece of information that can put a piece of the puzzle together. And it's about these building blocks that eventually tell a story, a sentence, a paragraph story. And I did a presentation last year at a conference, and for some clients I've shared this as well, and I called it the Identity Trilogy. And the Identity Trilogy is, okay, the criminals know, if you just look at the big three data breaches that have occurred in the last couple of years in Australia, nearly every Australian adult has been compromised in some way, shape, or form. So be it. You know what? It is a big deal, but what I'm going to say to you is that, did you know most Australian libraries have electoral rolls, and an electric roll is your full name, your date of birth, and where you live? A lot of people didn't realise that. So your data's been out there. The old telephone books. Yes, I was around with the telephone books. And I, as a copper, had to pay money.
Brian, you might need to explain to Daisy what a telephone book is.
Telephone book, Daisy. I nearly said something quite inappropriate. They're not in that way. I was thinking about my law enforcement days because it was an old joke. I had to jump in a witness box once and I won't go there. Anyway,
let's not go there. Explain.
No, we're not going there. But the point is that they know where we live. They know who we are. They know our date of birth now. They know our physical, tangible world. So we are all compromised. The second part of the trilogy is our digital identity. Okay, so Daisy, one of her Gmail accounts will the I love pink w@gmail.com. I'm not saying it is, but it could be. So, and that could be her handle or a code to so many different things. But in the amount of data breaches that we've seen, the amount of volume of data for sale every day in the dark web, we've got to assume, and there was a very good presentation by a media organization that went into some of the data from Have I Been Pwned from on an entity, and within 7 data breaches fully provided this digital profile of this entity. So guess what? Our digital identity is already compromised with our physical identity. And then it hit me with the third one. Third one, if anyone can put it out there, throw it in the chat if you haven't had a presentation, in the Q&A, not the chat, Q&A. But I was listening or reading up on the data breaches that occurred in Las Vegas year before last, and it hit me. I thought, what sort of data would a casino hold. And I'm thinking, if I was, Larry No Friends and I was a big high roller in a casino, if I walked into one of those casinos, they're going to know me. And straight away, the facial recognition and the CCTV is going to pick me up. It's going to alert advice to the pit crew boss. It's going to alert advice to the high rollers director. It'll probably book me a suite, same standard as I had last time I was there. They know what I eat. They know what I drink. They know what games I play. They know my betting limits. They know how to manipulate my behavior to keep me there at the table longer, and how much I average to lose, because most of the time we don't win. And they've got done. You walk into a Westfield shopping centre and you can have over 200 digital data points collected. All this information is about our personalities and our behaviours. So they know where we live. They know where we play online or participate online. And now they know, getting an insight to how we think. You use AI with all of that collective intelligence, and the world is their oyster, how they can then leverage future attacks, personalised, to Daisy's point much earlier, to us. And once I know what your personal views on something are, what you're passionate about now in terms of preparing the social engineering attacks, they're going to be beautiful. They are going to be works of art. They're going to be extraordinarily effective. Therefore, we can't always just focus on this is not going, we got to stop this getting out. We have to accept, I would argue, that it is out. And it is going to be exploited, because that data doesn't die. One thing crooks don't do is delete information. They do not delete data. They've got huge data lakes. I can see there's a whole industry, and it's going to get bigger, where criminal elements will do intelligence profiles for other criminals for hire. Okay, it's going to be as simple as that. Ransomware as a service it's just exploding. Intelligence profiling for the criminal to make efforts to target organizations and individuals is going to go through the roof. So that's one of the things we absolutely will see. Well, we'll know it's going to happen. It's going to be on the back end. Why on earth, for example, and this is where it's going to manifest in our physical world as well. Why on earth would I go on the road? Traditionally, if I'm breaking in a crook and I'm driving down, I'm looking for the house that has the least security, and most likely the people are not home. So, or I'm scanning, as James was saying before, with my reader, looking for someone with some unprotected car keys that are going to ping from the street so I can go in and steal the car. Whatever it may be, I'm going to choose that home that presents the most return and has the least security. And that's the way I would break into the house with the least security. So being more cognizant of that security is something that is going to be integral to how do we protect our homes in the future, and how we engage with things like social media and stop feeding it. But we've got to accept and expect the attacks will continue to come. So we've got to develop the skills through knowledge and application to protect ourselves when those attacks do. And that's where we need to put a lot of our offensive effort.
So
sorry, you may speak, Bo. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on. I'm going to jump on that because it's. I don't disagree with anything you said there, but there's 2 points I want to sort of raise. Doesn't matter how good we are on social media and how much we want to limit the information. What Daisy said is right. Information's already out there. We've got friends who are posting about us. If I'm out in the golf course with you, Brian, you're posting about how great you hit, but I'm tagged in the background.
I'm amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, the one that dribbled over the women's tee, that was a great shot. But you're posting that. I'm in the background, so everyone else that you tag, that's that profile that's building. So it looks like we trust sort of these apps that we buy or that we get and we put our information on, but that information's available. We're becoming lazy. The more information that's out there, the more it's being collected to build that profile. I want to throw it out to sort of the people here. The digital identity, it's been built over many years, ever since the internet sort of raised 30 years ago and come online. So our identities and our profiles have been built, our kids' profiles have been built, our family profiles have been built. Who actually owns that digital identity? Who owns our identity? So I'm going to throw that out there because it's an interesting conversation that I'm having at the moment with what Australia is going through with digital identity and what ACCC are doing. But following on from what you said before, crooks drive around the streets. They look for the opening door, the doors, the easy ways to get in. You know, we buy a dog because the dog will bark. It will alert us that there's a problem happening. We're buying equipment and we're putting it in our house, but we're not buying the dog that will alert us that there is a problem. We're not updating our equipment. We're assuming that it's someone else's responsibility once we buy that that camera we put in the house, or the TV, or the whatever IoT device that we have, our phones, our watches, everything that we put in, we assume it's someone else will fix it for us. We've got to take some personal responsibility. You know, and I work in the industry and I walk around to my kids and look at their phones. None of them have updated. They're 2 updates behind. And you say, update your phone. Oh, but I'm on social media. I can't do it. Or update whatever devices are there. It's our responsibility to make sure that our gateway, our sort of entry point, our driveway, which is, you know, whatever gateway that we have, is updated, is secure, because that's the easiest way for people to get in. We get something from an ISP and we plug it in, and there's no security on it, or very limited security that's written on a box. You know, it's not that hard to figure out how to access 80% of the gateways that are in people's houses, because they've left it as default and you go through. So part of this, I want to sort of point out that there is education, but there's also action against that education. And I don't think that we do it enough. And I don't think that we support our growing network or our tribe or our community around to look at ways that we can make it hard for that criminal to access our identity. It's available.
Isn't that action with education rather
than
against education?
Yeah. No, it's with education. It's 100%. You know, we have to educate because we don't know, but we also have to work together to make sure that we're implementing that education, that we're fine-tuning, that we're making it hard for the criminals to access. You know, and that's the challenge, that we're not probably doing it now. We're saying, hey, I bought this phone, it automatically updates. It only automatically updates if you say update now. It might download the update, but it's not updating. Our computers, you know, they don't necessarily update by themselves unless we make sure that the update's being applied. So part of that is, I suppose, it's on us, but it's on us as a community to ensure that it's hardened for the criminals to get in.
Perfect segue to the last 10 odd minutes. Let's move towards what everybody needs to know about what can we do about all this? How can we stay safe at home? We've already started to touch on a few of those things, Bo and Brian and Daisy. What things do you suggest people do? Clearly, Bo's just talking about making sure all your devices are updated because they put in security patches and they, you know, reduce the chances of getting in. What else, Brian, and then Daisy, and then Bo? What else do we need to do to stay safe?
But if this is the last segue going into the final thing, I hate seeing a grown sook cry. So let Bo go first again, and then I will. And I'm sorry, Daisy, if you don't mind, I don't want to see him cry, and Sook can carry on. Talking about my golf ball dribbling over the ladies' tee. I hate it when it comes out of the corner of his mouth. So Bo, please go first this time, and I'll go last.
I think Daisy should go first because.
All right, Daisy, it's over.
Okay, but if he cries, Daisy, it's your fault.
Okay, ladies first, but you put me on the spot. But James, just to clarify, last segment, segue or segment is what we can do to better protect ourselves at home.
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. So many. I think, Bo, you already mentioned about update patches and all that. As you were speaking about that and education, I was thinking we need to demystify cybersecurity in general. So I feel like growing up, I was always taught when we leave, we need to check if we've left anything and we need to lock the doors. Right. And I think we need to now do the same and translate into like our digital world, that when we leave, or, you know, we need to log out of things, we need to change things, like passwords regularly, like our toothbrushes, all that. I think a lot of people switch off and choose convenience over security because they don't understand and they think it's too difficult. So I think that is something we as a community, as an industry can do. Like I said before, I feel like, you know, the sole traders and small businesses are really struggling because they don't have the tools. I think, you know, the ACSC are trying. I feel like the government may be able to play more of a role. I think the E-Safety Commissioner does really well in terms of online safety for children and how they can use social media safely, how to be online safely. But I think the gap we still have is how we can talk to, businesses, but also maybe the elderly as well, how they can use it safely. I think the other thing, as Bo and Brian were speaking, I feel like we're not putting on, I don't think enough people understand the value of their data. So because of the data breaches, we have data breach fatigue. I'm not going to name them, but all of the recent large data breaches, I was said victim. All of them. Okay. And even I get to a point where I'm like, oh wow, like, is there any point in following those good cyber hygiene habits? Because it's everyone's got it. But I need to remind myself and educate my friends and family that it is important. My data is important, even if it has been leaked. I still need to protect my digital identity. So I think, and the last thing I would say, I think, James, we said it before, the last thing I would add is just to do a bit of an audit at home if you can. So when was the last time you updated all your devices? When was the last time you updated your Wi-Fi password? I stole this from, someone I know, Rachel Toback, but, she always says be politely paranoid. So be politely paranoid about everyone. So not just the plumber who comes and fixes your pipes, but even your children or your friends who come and use your Wi-Fi. Give them a guest Wi-Fi password. There's just little things you can do to really protect yourself. Hand it back to you.
Love that. Politely paranoid. It's good. Having the appropriate level of cynicism, right? You don't want to be switched off because you have to be engaged in the world, but we do have to have appropriate, polite paranoia. That's fantastic. Thank you, Daisy.
You go.
Good catch. Bo, Brian, I'll let you two argue about who's next.
I'll jump in because Brian will want to have the last word. So, and just following on from that convenience, Daisy, and I think it's a really good point. We become lazy at home. We become comfortable when things are working. So we assume that we're safe. So we've put in a network, a Wi-Fi network, and every guest that comes over connects to it. Any tradie that comes over and wants to connect a device, so we'll give them the password, and we don't change it. So we don't change it because it's too hard to change and look at every device that's changed. So essentially, that password is our network is open. What we've got to do is assume that we're vulnerable in every state and make it harder. So MFA has been around now for a number of years, and we still have a lot of personal accounts that we don't use MFA. Now, MFAs, you can compromise MFA, but it makes it just that little bit harder. Everything that we make a little bit harder for someone to compromise means that they'll go to a softer target. There I go. I start stealing Brian's thunder. So he won't know what to say after this. But what we've got to do, I think, is look at our digital lifestyle and make it harder for someone to use that against us. And if we can do that, and that's through education, that's through applied learning, but that's also through our community, making sure that our parents' network is safe and they've got passwords on their bank accounts or MFA on their bank accounts and their emails and everything else, and that they understand that some of the vulnerabilities that are coming through, and that I won't call them, or that I've got a safe word with them. We've got to make sure that it's a collective responsibility, because criminals out there are working together and they're isolating us. So if we work together and make it harder, they'll go somewhere else.
Good. And look, just to be 100% clear, in case you haven't heard, multi-factor authentication is what Bo's referring to with MFA. So if you're going to do something online or move money on a bank, you initiate the transaction, and then they send you either a code or you use a key fob or something like that. I know everybody probably knows, but just in case not, thank you both. Fantastic. Yes, we get lazy, we get comfortable. We just don't have, you may have noticed behind Brian and my logos there, we've got this little thing called cyber life skills. We talk about it all the time because we all know how to make toast, and we all know how to make rice, and we all know how to drive a car. We learn all these basic skills as we go through life. There's now a whole new set of skills that we're talking about now that we need to get better at. And we talk about as our generic cyber life skills. So that's what everything that we've been talking about so far today. Brian, what do we need to do to stay safe?
I promised to share an evolutionary story there before, and I want to share a story about a presentation I've developed many years ago. at the OSCET conference, maybe 15, I don't know. Seems years just roll by as you get older. Trust me, folks, the older you get, faster time goes. And I wanted to pick to demonstrate the importance of cybersecurity, cyber safety. And I thought, in a non-technical sense, I thought, what's a technology that had a very negative consequence to communities in some aspects? But over the years, we manage it. To me, cybersecurity, cyber safety, it's a risk management issue. How can you manage the risk if you don't first understand the threat and understand your role to play and what you should do? It's very difficult. You've got to have that knowledge and skill. So I picked the evolution of the modern motor car. Arguably, 1886 was the birth of the modern motor car. Worst consequence, road death. But guess what? Is anyone not going to drive their car tomorrow or today because they're worried about having an accident? 1,000 lives will be lost in this country today. So we've learned to accept that risk and we've learned to manage that risk. So for half an hour, I took the audience on a journey about the birth of the modern motor car and how we actually got the road toll declining over that period of time. And it was quite fascinating. And I'm not a car buff, but for example, would you believe in 1905, nearly 100% of the New York taxi fleet were all electric cars? And then here we are, 120 years later, pushing that barrow again. But it was a guy called Rockefeller who had some oil and a bloke called Henry T. Ford who could mass produce the internal combustion engine at half the price of an electric motor vehicle. That changed the corner. It was all about economics. So I took the audience on this journey, how we got the road toll declining and saved more lives. And fundamentally, they're at I'm at the 25-minute mark, and they look at me from the audience. I could see them, and their eyes are bewildered. Brian, what the hell are you talking? This is OSCET. This is a cybersecurity conference. Fascinating story, but what the hell's got to do with it? And there were 5 key points how we got the road toll steadily decline. There were some key moments, but 5 main points. Number 1, consumer public education on how to drive a car safely, how to wear things such as seatbelts, but it was how to cross a road safely, which we taught kids from the time I was small. It was all about consumer education and behaviours. 2, it was about investment in motor vehicle safety technologies. 3, integration of that safety technology into the technology of the motor vehicle. 4, legislation that mandated the adoption of and integration of safety. And things like increasing the road test, driving cars longer, many hours more spent on the road preparing for that thing. And 5, enforcement. I said, ladies and gentlemen, we've done this all before. I took out those 5 points. I took out the word road. I put in the word cyber. And I said, here's our solution. It works. We know it works. We've got the road toll that was horrific down to, dare I say it, we don't want to see those lives lost, but they are far more reduced than what they once were. And, what was the big turning point? It was in 1972, they passed a law that said you must wear a seatbelt. Cars had seatbelts, but you didn't have to wear it. No one wore them. And that was the biggest turning point. Then the next focus was on drink driving. So it comes back to education enforcement about how we behave. Now, are we going to issue licenses for the internet? No, that is not the point. But what I'm saying is that we have individual roles to play. We have roles that you're going to have to accept responsibility, that you've got to learn some stuff. You've got to acquire the knowledge and skills to protect yourself and your family better. We are no longer compartmentalized. We are part of an ecosystem that is omnipresent, and that's the acceptance we have to have. So we've got to look at the individual, the organization, and the community approach. But it comes back to developing our personal skills. That's not been a technology genius. I'm not even capable of that. I'm a dummy. But how to defend yourself against the advancing effort of the cross. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So look, I'm just going to make a final statement. We are giving our children loaded guns and not teaching them anything about gun safety. They've got phones in their rooms. They've got tablets in their rooms. They've got computers in their rooms. Same thing with our parents, with our grandparents, and with ourselves. And there's so many things we can do to educate and train. And yes, the legislation will catch up. So Daisy, thank you so much for your time. Bo, thank you so much for your time. Brian, once again, pleasure to work with you. Thank you all for the audience. I think I got to almost all except for one of the questions, so my apologies to that last question, but we're right tick over to the hour. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you again on Wednesday, May 7th for our next iteration.
And everyone out there in the cyclone in Brisbane or the northern New South Wales, please stay safe, get through this. We'll all see you on the other side. So look after yourselves and your loved ones.
Thanks all. Good luck.
Thank you,
Thanks, Ryan, for your help.
everyone. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.